Good afternoon. Welcome to our fixed charge utility tax webinar. My name is Esperanza Vielma, and I'm with the Environmental Justice Coalition for Water and also a co-founder of the Coalition for Environmental Equity and Economics. And we are here today with this live virtual webinar where you will hopefully learn more about the new utility tax proposal currently being considered by the California Public Utilities Commission. Here's what's at stake. The utilities and their allies are trying to raise electricity bills for millions of hardworking Californians, especially for renters and those that live in smaller homes. This utility tax will be catastrophic for people who live in apartments, condos, and small homes. Our bills will be going up, and this will negatively impact millions of people. You will have the opportunity to have questions and answers from our experts, so please post them in our comments. We welcome you again online, and we have a panel set up for you of various experts. We also have coalition members that'll be joining us. We have, just to give you the lineup, we have Pastor Ambrose Carroll of Green the Church. We have Francisco Moreno of COFEM. We have Thomas Helm of the California Environmental Justice Coalition. We have Ben Schwartz of the Clean Coalition. We have Mr. Richard McCann, our energy expert partner in the environmental economics firm, M Cubed. And we have Dr. Ahmad Faruqi, who is expert economist and rate design specialist. So again, welcome everyone. This is our lineup for today. And we are going to go ahead and get started with our first conversation that we're going to have with Pastor Ambrose Carroll from Green the Church. And Pastor Ambrose Carroll is going to tell us a little bit about his organization and if you can share why you're concerned about this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Pastor Ambrose Carroll, founder of Green the Church. And listen, we just want to let you all know that we are a national organization, but birthed right here in Oakland, California. We are an organization for and by the Black church that embraces the ideals of environmentalism and sustainability. We represent individuals who have a rough time sometimes making sure that these utility bills are paid. Our churches, I always say, all of our congregations have a benevolent fund, a fund for the poor, a fund for those who run into difficulties. And a lot of times, those difficulties are utility bills. And many of our congregations write checks, not to individuals, but directly to our utilities. These issues concern us when utilities move. And so Green the Church was founded 2009, and we have three particular pillars. We're all about amplifying green liberation theology, promoting sustainable practices, and building power for political and economic change. We believe that all of these issues are justice issues. We believe that all of these issues, how we work in concert with others, how our political and social communities engage is very important. And this is an issue that many of us have been thinking about. And from a faith tradition, we've been praying about because we care about the needs of our people. And so Green the Church talks about why, from a biblical standpoint, what happens in our environment is important. But we also talk about things like building efficiency, renewable energy, food sovereignty. We're making sure that we believe that every church ought to be growing food on church-owned property. We believe in being prepared when it comes to disaster preparedness. We are building resilient hubs all over the country. And quite frankly, this renewable energy piece is so huge right now that we're also doing solar, EV charging stations, and batteries. But no matter, in these communities, if we don't deal with our utility and find a different way so that we can be powered by the sun and powered by live things, and working to make sure that everything is not centralized, that we decentralize this work, we believe that it will be better for the planet, more sustainable for individuals. And so we are here sharing these values and these thoughts. Listen, if you want to know more about CEEE, you can contact me, Reverend Ambrose Carroll, at ambrose@greenthechurch.org. We're working north and south, east and west here in the state of California. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Ambrose Carroll. And if you're just joining us in our webinar, we're talking today about the fixed charge utility tax. We're hearing from folks from all over California who are concerned about the utility tax proceeding at the CPUC, California Public Utilities Commission. Next, we have Francisco Moreno from COFEM. And Francisco, thanks for joining us today. If you can give us a little background on why you have been involved with the issue. Thank you.
Hi, SP, and thank you for inviting me to this important forum. My name is Francisco Moreno. I am the Executive Director of COFEM, Consejo de Federaciones Mexicanas. And, well, I'm going to speak in Spanish because that's my role. Mi nombre es Francisco Moreno y soy director del Consejo de Federaciones Mexicanas. Estoy aquí para apoyar a la coalición de justicia para el medio ambiente y la equidad. Más que nada, nuestra organización trabaja en diferentes programas, pero para nosotros es muy importante el medio ambiente y la justicia en la energía. Es por eso que tenemos ya algunos años en esta coalición. Y por mi parte, quiero informarles que COFEM es una organización sin fines de lucro, es una non-profit organization. Tenemos 22 años trabajando como tal, y tenemos diferentes programas como es inmigración, como es pues educación. También tenemos medio ambiente, tenemos 2 oficinas, una aquí en Los Ángeles y otra en Coachella, California, en la cual básicamente tenemos un programa muy grande de conservación, tanto en Coachella como aquí en Los Ángeles. Y dentro de ese programa de conservación tenemos ese interés de que nuestra comunidad se entere de lo que está pasando en términos de la energía. ¿Cómo podemos nosotros cuidar nuestra energía, la energía solar, la energía eólica y todo este tipo de energías? Y es por eso que el día de hoy pues se va a hablar puntos muy importantes acerca de esa injusticia que se quiere hacer con las compañías de energía eléctrica. Tienen el propósito de imponernos una tasa fija de electricidad, la cual sería pues dañaría la economía de nuestras familias, unas que viven en apartamentos, que es la mayoría, otras que viven en casas pequeñas, en fin, eso estamos en contra de esa tasa fija, y pues los expertos nos van a decir hoy de qué es lo que se trata. Así es que los que nos están acompañando a través del Facebook de COFEM van a estar pudiendo ver en español lo que están hablando. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, SP, and I'll be here.
Gracias, Francisco. And again, if you're joining us today, we are talking about the fixed charge utility tax in our webinar. And we have here a panel of experts, and we're hearing from folks from all over California. And you will have an opportunity to chime in and ask questions. And so next, I'd like to call up a good friend of mine, Thomas Helm. Thomas Helm is an amazing community activist. He's here from the San Joaquin Valley, and he is the executive director of the Valley Improvement Project. And he's also the coordinator of the California Environmental Justice Coalition, CEJC. CEJC is one of the most grassroots and community-focused EJ organizations in California, and EJCW is proud to be a member of. Thomas, can you tell us a little bit more about CEJC and why you're here today? Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, SB. Yeah, EJCW, one of the founding members of CEJC. We were founded in 2014 in the small San Joaquin Valley town of Kettleman City, where one of the largest toxic waste dumps are, and we've almost more than doubled in size since then. We went to from about 40 groups to now over 80 different groups from all over the state of California. A lot of them grassroots, community-based environmental justice organizations. Green the Church is one of our newer members, so I'm here to support our members, EJCW and Green the Church, on this issue. CEJC was founded really based on the exposure to toxics and harmful pollution to some of our most disadvantaged community members in the state of California. But we've grown a lot. Again, we have over 80 members. They work on a lot of different issues, and I'm really happy to see the expansion into other areas. It's not always just about the exposure to pollution, even though that's a very big deal. It's also about keeping an eye on the state of California and how they are charging, especially lower income folks and renters. And so we really need to keep an eye on the California Public Utilities Commission. They have a long history of taking advantage of disadvantaged communities and doing what the energy companies want them to do. So I'm just here to support our members, support this cause, for advocating for this issue. And I appreciate you inviting me to be a part of the events, and look forward to hearing the experts and what they have to say more on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. And yes, we're here continuing the fight and to learn about the fixed charge utility tax that's being proposed right now with the CPUC. And we are going to learn a lot about that next, because next we have Ben Schwartz, and he's coming from the Clean Coalition. He's known as the Wonder Kid in sustainability circles as a policy specialist. Ben represents the Clean Coalition in proceedings at the California Public Utilities Commission, the California Energy Commission, California Air Resource Board, California Independent System Operator, and Federal Energy Regulator Commission. He's an expert on many areas of energy policy that are crucial to the environmental justice communities that we serve, including microgrids, interconnection, net energy metering, community solar, demand flexibility, electrification, and energy efficiency. So Ben Schwartz, give us the breakdown. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. Just while the slides are being brought up, I'd like to say the Clean Coalition is dedicating to accelerating the transition to renewable energy in a modern grid. We do that through technical policy as well as project-based learning. So we're pretty well positioned, and we're in the proceeding as well here. Okay, great. There we go. So I'll be talking about how high fixed charge disproportionately punishes low-income households, apartments, duplexes, and small homes, and upends the key incentives for conservation and energy efficiency. Next, please. All right, great. So why is a high fixed charge a bad option? Well, all of the proponents, including the utilities, suggest that a high fixed charge is absolutely necessary to solve the crisis of unaffordable electricity rates in California. We don't disagree, rates are very high, but we do not believe that a fixed charge is the right way to do this. And the main reason is because a fixed charge is a one-time solution that reduces rates. But if the utilities continue to request rate increases that outpace inflation, then in just a few years, we are no better than we are off now. And frankly, prices are high across the board. Low-income customers are struggling, but Also, there are millions of renters, historically disenfranchised groups, residents located in disadvantaged communities, all of whom could see bill increases from a high fixed charge. Ensuring that low-income customers are helped is a benefit and is necessary, but should not be done so at the expense of other Californians, specifically those who are struggling. And the other issue is that rate increases are not stopping anytime soon. Just this year, PG&E raised rates by 9%. SDG&E is proposing 8%. And over the next 4 years, it's estimated that PG&E will likely raise rates by as much as 32%. And then finally, when we consider an issue like electricity rates, there are also a number of intersectional issues related to achieving the state's energy and policy goals, including energy consumption patterns, the sustainable growth of local solar, electrification, greenhouse gas reduction, and environmental justice, as well as affordability. Next slide, please. So the question becomes, what are the existing cost drivers leading to electrical rates, increases in electricity rates? The main one up here first is transmission. And I'll just take a second to break this down because this is the key difference in the fight between local resources and local solar and projects in the middle of nowhere. If you look at the bottom right, the average rate of transmission access charges over the last 11 years, which is how historical transmission costs are valued, have more than tripled. That's a high increase that is not slowing down anytime soon. CAISO estimates that over the next 20 years, we're going to need $30 billion in additional transmission costs. And the Clean Coalition has studied projects in the past and knows that the upfront cost is usually 1/10 of what the full cost to the ratepayers is. So $30 billion is more likely to be closer to $300 billion than in amounts that will lead to increased rates. In addition, there are substantial costs related to wildfire mitigation, payouts for wildfire victims, wildfire insurance costs, all three of which are related to utility negligence, as well as undergrounding costs for infrastructure and costs for generation, legacy generation, and nuclear decommissioning. Unless one or multiple of these issues are addressed, rates will continue to rise at a pace that outpaces inflation. Next slide, please. Great. So this is a summary of modeling that was done by Flagstaff Research in partnership with the Clean Coalition. And what it shows is that there are three main brackets of groups that were modeled. On the left are low square footage, low usage homes, and that means that those typically have high efficiency appliances. The middle represents the median square footage, median usage groups. And on the right are high usage, high square footage, high usage groups with usually low efficiency appliances. Next slide. Now, when we modeled the three highest fixed charge proposals, that is from the utilities, the IOUs, NRDC in turn, that's the National Resources Defense Council, and the CPUC's Public Advocate's Office, the trend was the same and disturbing for all three of them. On the right side is single-family high-usage homes. Those are those who use the most energy, and the result is that they will see the biggest savings under a high fixed charge scenario. On the other side, and clustered toward the left, are multifamily, low usage, high efficiency homes. And those will actually see significant bill increases of around $300 or more. Now, this trend is opposite to what the state should be trying to achieve. We want people to electrify and to be more efficient with more efficient appliances, and they should be rewarded for that, rather than receiving the signal that it's better to use more energy and be less efficient. That's moving in the wrong direction. Next slide. So now the question is, what does this proposal do in terms of local solar? Now, local solar, as is, has had its value reduced quite a bit over the last couple months, but this should not take away from the fact that it is extremely valuable to the grid. And I'm not going to go too far into this, but essentially what it shows is that on the highest all-time usage day, if the solar interconnected to the grid, if the majority of it were local, California would not have had an outage situation and would not have to worry in the future. The two key points here are that bringing down the total system peak will result in hundreds of billions of dollars in savings for the ratepayers and avoided transmission spending, and that reducing that peak by 10% is enough to prevent most outages. Next slide. Now, the last slide is just takeaways. The main one being that a high fixed charge doesn't help the people proponents say they do. It will result in less affordable rates for most Californians and reduce transparency, which will make it easier for the utilities to raise rates or request a higher fixed change. And then reallocating costs is not the same as permanently lowering rates. And finally, the main takeaway is that the best thing that consumers can do is invest in local resources, including local solar, which have environmental, economic, and significant resilience benefits. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Thank you for that information. And again, if you're joining us today, we are doing the fixed charge utility tax webinar. And we're hearing from our expert of panels and from Californians like yourselves who are concerned about the utility tax that's proceeding at the California Public Utilities Commission. Next, I'd like to bring in our energy expert, Mr. Richard McCann. Richard McCann is a founding partner of the environmental economics firm M-Cubed. His work on California's energy and water policies shaping the energy regulatory landscape for community choice aggregation, CCA, and distributed energy resources, DERs, and identifying financing sources and incentives for groundwater sustainability agency, GSAs, to recharge the aquifers and upgrade flood protection. So if Mr. Richard McCann is now going to give us his point of view on this subject. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you, SB. I'll begin now as the slide is being put up. Just to give you a little bit of background, I've been involved with this issue for the California Energy Storage Association and also with the net energy metering issues with agricultural clients as well as solar clients on this particular issue. So just to begin, I'll move on to the next slide. When I heard about this proposal, it struck me, reminded me of a cartoon strip, Doonesbury, from 40 years ago, where they had a faux Reagan administration official come in and say, well, what would you do with your $26 tax bill cut? And Mark Slackmeyer, the DJ, says, well, a dinner and a movie? And the official responds, well, no, you would invest in a steel plant, of course. So as I heard this, next slide, I want to go on to what the supply side myth is in this proceeding. The claim is that customers are going to take their energy bill savings and go out and invest in heat pumps and electric vehicles. They're not really going to do that. They're going to turn up their air conditioning, invest less in energy efficiency, leave their lights on longer, buy more electronic games. They're just going to simply use more electricity. And just doing a quick back of the envelope calculation says that the peak load could go up as much as 3,000 megawatts, which would wipe out all of the reliability investment that we've made in order to keep our lights on. Next slide. So really at the core of this, and Ben did a good job of describing this, is that utility rates are skyrocketing and the utilities are trying to find a way to disguise this. Ultimately, the average energy bill isn't really going to change. They're just rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. We have PG&E rates rising rapidly through 2026, and they're going to continue to rise because of a combination of undergrounding and some other factors in distribution investment. And San Diego Gas and Electric has the same issue. Their electricity rates are also skyrocketing for many of the same reasons. This is going to be an unsustainable situation. And if we look at the next slide, we've looked at the calculation of how much it's going to cost ratepayers over the next 30 years to pay electric bills in both SDG and PG&E, and it's close to $50,000 in net present values over that time period. If you look at the alternative of installing microgrids, which are a form of distributed energy resources, it costs $34,000 to $40,000 in order to install a system where you can walk away from the utility grid and run your own power system. And this is something that a lot of wealthy customers are probably going to be able to afford because they will be able to put down that amount of money. Guess who's going to be left holding the bag for utility costs after those wealthy customers have left? And so this is really at the core a big equity issue. The utilities are trying to set this up as a fight between low income and high income customers. That's not really what this is about. This is about shareholders who have much higher incomes than even the highest average group of utility customers. And they are the ones that are going to be benefiting from this. This is really an action to sustain and support utility revenues into the future. Next slide. So there are better alternatives out there, some that we have proposed on behalf of clients. For example, decarbonization incentive rate, which would give allowances to converting from gas to electric appliances and then charging it rates at much lower rates for those new installations, offering fixed cost subscriptions where you pay a fixed charge for 3 to 10 years, a fixed amount for 3 to 10 years in return for getting 50 to 80% of your average electricity use. And then also digging deeper into how utility investments should be paid off by ratepayers, changing that formula so that we really can cap utility costs going forward. Next, please. And with that, I'll just wrap up and turn it back to Espy. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. McCann, and go Bears, by the way. And finally, I would like to bring up with us our energy economist, Dr. Ahmad Faruqi. Dr. Ahmad Faruqi is an economist who is recognized across the globe as a leading expert on analyzing energy issues in a factual, fair, and balanced manner. He has advised some 150 clients in 12 countries on 5 continents, including Egypt, the Philippines, Saudi Arabia, and 20 United States, of course, including California. We're honored to have Dr. Faruqi's expertise and his very bold efforts to expose the failing investor-owned utility model and offer keen insight into how to transition into a clean and affordable energy future. If you can please give us your point of view on these proposals that are in front of the CPUC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, SB. I really appreciate being invited. What I wanted to do was put this proposal in context by comparing it to proposals that we have seen elsewhere, either in the United States or across the globe. And I must admit, having done electricity pricing work for more than 4 decades across the globe, I have never seen anything quite honestly so stupid as this particular proposal. And what worries me is that the people putting it forward obviously are not stupid. So that makes me wonder whether there's more to this than meets the eye. In other words, there is a malicious agenda at work here. The proposal to levy a fixed charge is really not as advertised. What is the advertising? It'll create affordable electrification. And as the previous speakers have mentioned, it will certainly not do that. So why don't we go to the next slide, and I'll add a few more thoughts to what we have heard from the preceding speakers. First of all, I do agree that every utility needs to have a fixed charge. There's no debate there. PG&E and San Diego Gas and Electric today have no fixed charges, and SCE has a fixed charge of less than $1 a month. That needs to change. There is no disagreement there. I actually supported that in the past. So let's look at the national median for investor-owned utilities like these three in California. The national median is less than $12 a month. The highest number that I've ever seen is, I believe, $37, but most utilities are significantly under that. In California, there are two municipal utilities that we are all aware of: Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, fixed charge of $15 a month for large users and lower for smaller users, and SMUD has a fixed charge of $23.50. Those numbers, let's compare them to what PG&E is proposing. They're proposing, of course, an income graduated charge, but if we ignore that for a moment and just look at the average fixed charge they're proposing, is $53 a month, which would clearly be the highest in the country. But not only would it be the highest in the country, it would be a shocker here in California because PG&E today has a charge of $0. So going from $0 to $53 a month in one fell swoop is truly a shocker, but it's also way out of line with what we're seeing elsewhere in the country. And you have similar results for the proposals from San Diego and SCE. They are unprecedented. They are both unprecedented in comparison to what they offer today, as well as compared to the nation. And actually, even in England, I just checked recently, it's around $20 a month in England. I've done work around the globe, and most of the fixed charges are in that range. They are between $20 and $30 a month maximum. And it took them several years to get there. They don't just do that in one jump. And they don't try to justify it as a way to do electrification, which is the stated objective here. Next slide, please. And as we just heard, particularly from Richard, there is no evidence that this proposal is going to promote affordable electrification. All it'll do is it'll reduce the energy charge and move that revenue into a fixed charge. So it's like a shell game. The average person will not come out ahead. It's sort of like you lower one piece and you raise another piece. What's the point of it? Well, we'll come to that in a moment. And let me also state that low-income customers, the really low-income customers, the ones who are on the CARE program, for example, they already get a 35% discount. And if this will make them better off, they won't get enough additional money here to buy a heat pump or an electric car. Most of them don't even have a car to begin with. And many of them don't even have an HVAC system. They have fans in their house. So they will save some money, as I will show in a graph coming up soon, but they will not save enough to make investments in heat pumps or electric cars, which is the stated objective. It's kind of like a bridge too far. It just is not realistic. Next, please. So what this will do, and I'll show you in some graphs, and I think they complement what we have seen earlier, that middle-income customers, in other words, people making more than $50,000 a month, whose bills are currently in the $50 to $150 a month range. There are lots of those folks. They're singles, there are couples living in apartments, there are families living in energy-efficient homes, and there are homes with solar panels. All of them will see their bills go up. And all it'll do is encourage wasteful use of energy, as Richard outlined. And in a sense, it'll reverse California's historical, long-standing and long-admired trend of promoting energy efficiency. Why would we want to promote waste? That's something that I still cannot figure out. Next, please. So I'm just going to show you a couple of charts here about the impacts these will have on customer bills. Next, please. So for customers who are earning more than $46,000 but less than $150,000, sometimes called low and middle income customers, those customers whose current bill is $50 a month, the bar shown on the very left, the red bar, their bill is going to rise by about 70%. And those whose bills are just under $100 a month, we see their bills rise by 20%. And the $150 customer $150,000 income customer, sorry, $150 customer who's in that income range, whose bill is around 150, they will see no change at all. So the people who will be benefiting are the ones shown in the blue bars. They are the ones who are using a lot of energy. They're either wasting energy, or they have very large homes, or for whatever reason, they are not efficient users of energy. They will be rewarded for being gluttonous in their use of electricity. Next, please. And for customers whose incomes are in the 150,000 or higher range, they will be hit really hard. A lot of solar customers are in that category. And if you're a solar customer whose bill today is $50 a month, your bill is going to rise by 145% roughly. So all of that investment that people have made in energy efficiency technologies and in solar technologies, their investment will be laid waste, and they will be, in a sense, thrown to the wolves. So what I don't understand is, why has this been put forward? I mean, it strikes me as being very mendacious, and it really is an attempt to harm customers who are trying to lower their bills, force them to have higher bills so that the utilities can enjoy their higher earnings. And I can tell you, as a customer on a time of use rate, my off-peak rate, which runs from midnight to 3 p.m., which is the bulk of the hours in the day, that has gone up by 60%, 60% in the last 4 years. It's rising at 15% a year. It's out of control. And just yesterday, to refresh my memory before giving this presentation, I discovered it's gone up again, this time by a penny a kilowatt hour. But even then, a penny is a penny. And so I'm almost afraid to look at my rates, because they seem to be rising like a fever in the body every day, day at a time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Faruqi, for all of that information and breaking down the numbers for all of us so that we can understand, you know, what we're going into here and facing as Californians move forward with larger energy consumption and bills. So one of the questions that we have from the audience, first and foremost, and I'm going to ask Ben if you can possibly answer this question, is, since you're part of the proceedings, where exactly do things stand as of right now with how we got here? Basically, I guess give a little background on that with the Assembly bill, and then where things stand now. Thanks.
Sure. So AB 205 is the Assembly bill that led to this proceeding. It was a little bit of a unique bill in that it was kind of passed at the last moment. And, you know, when we say that, it was, I think 3 days prior to the end of the session, the bill had no words in it. And when the governor signed it, it had, you know, some tens of thousands more words in it. And there was absolutely no public process or, you know, the usual public comment and hearing process. Really, there was just no transparency surrounding it. So people didn't really know what was happening or what it was going to lead to until after it had already been passed. And, you know, we're seeing the effects of that now. In terms of the proceeding, there were 9 groups that submitted proposals. I would say 7 of 9 were for very high fixed charges of some rates, or fixed charges that would be very complicated to you know, implement. The Clean Coalition did not initially submit a proposal, but seeing how, you know, crazy expensive everything was, we decided to move to the other end and, you know, have the lowest possible proposal that just represents, you know, close to the status quo if the CPUC must do something. And, you know, just to add one more thing, I will say one of kind of the positive steps that we can say is that the proceeding is now focused on a fixed charge that is aimed at the 2 low-income subsidy groups, their CARE and FARA customers, and then having something for everybody else. So they're moving kind of in the right direction, but, you know, the high fixed charge is still too much, and we would far support having no fixed charge at all, you know, based on the justification that it solely apply to electrification.
Well, thank you for giving us the update on where we are with the proceedings and with the fixed charges. Another question that we have here, and maybe we can have Dr. McCann and Dr. Faruqi address this, is it sounds as though it's counterintuitive, but why will wealthy people end up paying lower electricity bills because of this proposal?
So I'm going to start off by I saw this come out shortly after this was announced. You might be familiar that Beyonce and Jay-Z bought a $20 million mansion in Malibu. Their electric bill is going to go down by a third under this proposal because they're going to be getting, what happens is the variable rate charge is going to go down from roughly 35 cents a kilowatt hour down to 22 cents a kilowatt hour. And then the difference is going to be rolled into this fixed charge for everybody else. And so if you use a lot of electricity, your bill is going to go down basically a third from the difference of 35 cents to 22 cents. And for someone who's using thousands of kilowatt hours a month, there is that fixed charge is going to be a trivial amount of your bill. If your bill is $1,000 or $2,000 a month, who cares about $50 a month on top of that? So this is a lot of wealthy customers who have big households, big houses, who don't have a lot of energy efficiency measures installed or solar rooftop installed. Their bills are going to go down, and this is going to encourage them to consume more. They're going to run their AC longer, leave their lights on, etc. All of those things. We're going to see them increasing their usage and caring less about saving energy.
And just to add on for a second, I think that's a perfect explanation. And to really tie it back to the utilities, right? The utilities, they make the most money from their transmission infrastructure investments. And the question is, what happens when we use more money? Well, we need more infrastructure. We need more transmission. And so it relates directly back to the utilities making more money overall.
And if I can just add a couple of footnotes there, picking up on your last comment, Ben, that's why they hate rooftop solar and decentralized solutions. DER solutions are anathema to them because they make no money on them. There is no investment. The customer is the one who's made the investment, and the customer comes out ahead because they lowered their bill. They get a positive return on their investment. The utilities view that as a mortal threat to their business model, which is the more you invest, the more you make, and therefore the less you invest, the less you make. So, but it's obviously politically not a good argument for them to make. So what do? Is they try to hide behind the curtain of electrification and climate change and affordability. And that's the concoction that AB 205 has become. It should go down in history as the worst form of hypocrisy ever seen in humankind, pretending to be the Pope and shooting the prisoner. That's pretty much what they're doing. That's a very bad metaphor. I just made it up, but I hope pretending to be a person with high morals and being more satanic than anyone else has ever been. I mean, it is the ultimate. I was stunned as an economist, but even more so as a human being, I was offended by the hypocrisy. And these utilities and the commission, I just don't know what to make of it. This is my home state. I have lived here since 1974. It's so embarrassing. I have clients around the globe asking me, has California really lost it now? I mean, it's being condemned left and right by Republicans and Democrats in the state and outside of the state. It is an abomination. I mean, and I'll probably stop with the rhetoric, but let me just point back to the bar charts I showed. They quantify the impacts. The more you use, the smaller is the fixed charge as a proportion of your budget. So yes, the fixed charge went up, but your volumetric usage, as Richard indicated, your rate was 34 cents. It dropped to 22 cents. If you are a large user, an energy hog, as Severin Borenstein calls them, or whatever expression you use, you are using more energy than you should use. I mean, I was just talking to somebody on the East Coast. They have a customer who's using, if you can believe it, 60,000 kilowatt hours a year. I said, how is that possible? Is that a residential customer? It turns out it's some tycoon, some very famous tycoon who I would not name. And in that dwelling, who knows what they're doing? those are the people whose bills will go down. And if we want to promote affordable electrification, it's the very opposite of what we'll end up doing. So it's like an oxymoron of the worst kind. It belongs in the Oxford English Dictionary, AB 205.
Well, and I want to point out just one thing that Ahmed's really riled up about this. He was hired by the utilities for a number of years to do their rate design work. So these are his clients, and he is outraged at them.
And,
So
and
I
I,
just,
Richard, I will say in confidence, many of them who work at these three utilities themselves are outraged. They don't know. So we don't know who came up with this concoction. And all of my other utility clients are saying, okay, a fixed charge is a good idea, but if you do too much of this, it becomes a terrible idea. They'll all get the whiplash as well. I mean, some of them have a fixed charge of $5. They want to make it $6. They can't even get $6. And here we want to go from $0 to $92 for the upper middle class. I mean, that's like 9 times the national median. I mean, where has common sense left us? I mean, have we become truly, as somebody said, I mean, this is a very famous person I will not name. I'll do my best not to name, a chair of a big regulatory commission. He said California finally has gone mad. That was his statement. These are people in the industry. They are not necessarily people who attack utilities or commissions all the time. They are from within the industry. It's an embarrassment all around.
Well, thank you all for trying to get some information here to our public here in California. And so we have a question from one of our Facebook feeds from NCS Collaborative. It says, seems that this rate benefits high usage customers. Maybe that's why the stated goal of this is electrification. Overconsumption seems to be a perverse incentive, though, unfortunately. So if somebody'd like to comment on that.
I'll just jump in and say that Ahmed pointed this out early on in this discussion, that people don't go out and buy new EVs and new heat pumps or new furnaces every year. It's usually only a few percentage of the population that does this. Maybe 5% of the households, and that's probably on the high side. If you're trying to encourage electrification, you should be taking actions that target that 5% of the households when they are making their decision, not giving a free ride to the other 95% of the households who aren't making that decision at this moment. And so this is like a big shotgun scattershot policy that is really not going to advance electrification, or if it does, it's going to be over decades of time, and we don't have decades to do this. We need to have very focused policies that really step up and target electrification decisions by consumers today in order to get moving forward. That's not what this does.
And if I can just add a footnote, and I really want to hear from the other speakers, particularly the pastor. I mean, my comment was that if this is a hypothesis, that this new rate structure is going to encourage electrification, where is the evidence? If there is no evidence, let's do an experiment. Let's do a pilot. Let's do a trial. Let's not just plunge into this. We don't even know how to swim. We're going to jump into the ocean without knowing if it'll come out alive or not. I mean, it seems too rushed. And when I raised that concern, the response was, we cannot wait. Climate change is real. We need to do it right away. And I agree we need to do something right away, but it's not this. This is not going to give us what we were told it would give us. And back to the AB 205, I understand many of the legislators who voted on, they didn't even know this was in there. It was stuck in. And now they're getting calls. They're being besieged with upset people, and they don't even know what they have signed off on. So this is very suspicious. You know, the way it was handled, the economics is not there, and the politics clearly is terrible because everyone seems to have written negatively about it, except the proponents. The proponents, of course, you would expect they would support it. But if you exclude them, hardly anyone else is supporting it. So I guess from the pastor's perspective, how do you think this comes across to people that you interact with?
Yeah, thank you. I think, you know, again, listening, and thank you all for the information and the nuts and bolts. These things are oftentimes purposefully put together in a way that we're not talking plainly. And the Bible, from the pastor's perspective, says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness, oftentimes in high places. So when you begin to talk about, even individuals on the inside that often work with integrity, sometimes when these things come, we haven't figured out where is the impetus. And so I think as we look at this, we have to look at this issue, but look at the larger context in our state and in our nation, because, in every city, great theologian talked about the city of God. There is a political wing and there should be an economic wing, but then there also has to be an ethical and a moral wing, and there has to be balance between them. And just like the storms that continue to brew, nature is out of balance. But our cities, our state, our structures are out of balance. And it really, calls us to begin to do, as you have done today, to begin to speak truth to power in all kinds of ways. But I think together, this becomes important because these things are foundational. And if things like this happen at night, they happen in ways that are not transparent, then we have difficulties. And I hope that to today, for my community, it helps to sound the alarm on where we need to shed more light. Thank you.
Pastor Carol, can you talk a little bit about like some of the work that you all are doing at Green the Church, like with the sustainability hubs?
Yeah, I think in the same way, when we talk about infrastructure, funding coming down, Justice 40 funding, we're trying to ensure that a lot of that funding gets to the places that it was intended. And so we are making sure in the Black community, our faith buildings are some of our largest assets, probably the largest asset of the Black community. And so when we start talking about the infrastructure, whether it's solar or EV charging stations, that we're able to participate in the build out of that. Because in the same way as funds come down, people begin to move funds around, begin to make legislation that disempowers the communities. And so we are shining light, getting together, trying to find as much information as we can so that we can have those centers of resilience for our communities in time of storm or earthquake or whatever. But at the same time, just being aware of the political process and how our economic wing, our political wing, and how our ethical wings all work together for peace and prosperity. Thank you, Esther, for asking.
Well, thank you. And we hope that you're able to obtain that funding to get those sustainability hubs up and running so that we can have an alternative to our current situation here. And so there's a question that we had for all that basically is, should this go through, what will happen if one of these high fixed charges gets approved by the CPUC? So if we can get that perspective from each of our panelists, please. And whoever wants to start first.
Yeah, so I'll just start by saying that the trend that we're seeing from the CPUC proceeding right now is that they are aiming to pass a first effort fixed charge. So I think regardless of what the outcome is, if this is not able to be repealed, the first step, whatever the outcome needs to be, ensure that it does not get higher. Ensure that, we're not looking at another increased fixed charge in 2 more years. Ensure that there's, a reasonable standard and that the CPUC sticks with it. So I think that will be probably the most important thing. If it really is one of the high fixed charges that gets passed, I would say it will be important potentially to think of a legislative solution next year. I think the other thing is that the CPUC does not necessarily they have to authorize a fixed charge, and that's kind of getting unnecessarily complicated. But just authorizing it does not mean it will be applied throughout their service territory. There's still some extra steps. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there are a few different points to fight it and a few different levels. And this seems like a central organization that will be leading the charge to ensure that, that the fixed charge of whatever sort gets repealed. Certainly join this.
I'll just add a couple of quick points. There is the whole issue of the income graduation of the fixed charge that was implicit in our discussion. I think it'll be taken to court. Income data is confidential and private and cannot be just taken away by the utilities and billed customers. So that's one concern. The second concern I have is the utility people themselves have told me behind the scenes that their billing systems and their IT systems are not in a position to do this billing, even if it is approved. So it sounds good in theory, and it delights some individuals who have proposed it, but it's not practical, it's not legally acceptable either. And certainly a fixed charge in the range of $92 a month or higher will invite customer retaliation. There will be public commotion, there will be rallies, and I think the governor and the legislature cannot ignore those public sentiments. I think this is kind of like sometimes viewed as the second bite at the apple. The first bite was when they changed net metering to the net billing tariff, and somehow they got it through. So this is coming on the heels of that, and they have, in a sense, tasted blood because they succeeded with the NBT. So now they're coming after the remaining flesh that is there, the customer's flesh.
Yeah, and I actually think that things could even turn more sour. The Howard Jarvis Tax Coalition is thinking of putting a initiative on the ballot. I think it may actually be imperative for your coalition to communicate with them, because I think one of the bigger things that might happen is they might actually go off after low income subsidies in general. Water utilities already face this problem. Some of you are familiar that LADWP just rescinded their water utility discount. This could get caught up in that same movement, as the initiatives often go off and grab a bunch of other issues and roll them in, and the entire care discount program could get wiped out as part of this process if it's not handled quickly. And I think that your coalition, which everybody should be thinking about joining, should be in that conversation in order to make sure that it's really focused on the specific issue that's at hand here, and not wrapping up a bunch of extraneous issues in that.
No, yeah, and speaking of that whole LADWP, I thought about that as far as how that would be applied to this scenario, and I think you answered that question as far as it could be applied, and then some of those programs could then go away as a result of it. If there were to be a lawsuit brought forward in the similar case. So if there was anyone else, I don't know if you wanted to comment as far as like our last question that we had, put forth in terms of bringing, what some of the actions that you all think. I know that Ben had said some things, and us as a coalition, Dr. McCann, we are moving forward with that as far as building the momentum here and getting folks educated on the issue. So that being said, we want to make sure that you join the coalition. And we are going to have different actions that were taking place, including repealing AB 205. And it's, monumental to do something of the sort, but nonetheless, we need to do the attempt, because like Dr. Faruqi said, there are going to be like lawsuits that will come about, and, potentially also, like we said, Dr. McCann's point about other programs would be under fire. So if we want to finish and wrap up so that we can get last comments.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you all, for illuminating us. This is very informative. And I'm going to say something in Spanish because I have I see questions en español. Es muy importante escuchar esto. Our Latino immigrant community doesn't know about all this. And es muy importante que estemos enterados, que estén viendo este tipo de webinars. Vamos a comentar para ver si hacemos otro en español, para que todos entendamos mejor lo que está pasando y repeler el AB 205, que es la bill que se quiere imponer para hacer el fixed rate o la carga fija. Para mí es muy importante como director de COFEM que nos estén escuchando, que estén escuchando de primera mano esta información que muchas veces no la sabemos, no tenemos esta información. Sabemos que nosotros los inmigrantes, más que nada latinos, vivimos en casas pequeñas, en apartamentos, ¿verdad? Y son a los que más va a afectar este cambio. Y es por eso que estamos a todos urgiendo para que se unan a la coalición, La coalición es muy fácil unirse a la coalición. Dentro de la invitación que les enviamos está un QR code. Ahí nada más hay que ponerlo en su teléfono y lo espejean y entran directamente a la coalición. Por favor, únanse a la coalición para hacer fuerte esto. Thank you, SP.
No, gracias, Francisco. And yes, we hope to have this in Spanish, as Francisco said, so that we can then inform the large majority of our California population. And at this time, I'd like to, again, our action item is to join the Coalition for Environmental Equity and Economics so that you can be, kept informed of the different actions and to repeal Assembly Bill 205. And I'd also like to thank all of our panelists and speakers today for joining us on our fixed charge utility tax webinar. Francisco Moreno from COFEM, Dr. Richard McCann from MCubed, and Reverend Dr. Ambrose Carroll, Sr. from Green the Church, and Dr. Ahmad Faruqi, and also Ben Schwartz from the Clean Coalition, and Thomas Helm, who we also had on from both VIP and CEJC. So again, thank you. Please share with your friends and family the recorded messages of, truth to numbers that were told here today. And thank you again to all of our guests. We hope to see you soon, and we hope that this action that we bring forth will make some change and make some sense for our Californians to be able to move forth and to stop this fixed charge utility tax. Again, thank you, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.